Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer brought to you by Forge College. So in our last lesson, we were super busy defending the castle walls from all those nasty outside attackers, looking at things like Sybil attacks, phishing, and denial of service. But today we're actually walking inside the castle. We're heading straight down into the basement to inspect the vault doors themselves. That's right, we are diving deep into the security concerns for upgradable contracts. Let's get right into it.
Okay, here's our blueprint for today. We've got 5 sections. 1. Introduction to upgrade risks. Then we'll tackle 3 distinct mechanical bugs, guarding the initializer, locking down upgrades, and storage mismatches, before compiling our final debug report in Section 5. Moving right along.
Section 1, Introduction to Upgrade Risks, the Machine's Vulnerabilities. Now, securing an upgradable contract, it is entirely about protecting the actual upgrading process itself. The scaffolding around your contract is honestly just as vulnerable as the logic inside it. To understand why, let's quickly refresh on the proxy pattern. Think of it kind of like a machine's replaceable engine block. In the Web3 world, once code is deployed, it's immutable, right? So for upgrades, we use a proxy. Users interact with the chassis, that's the proxy contract, which holds all the state and the data, but the proxy delegates all the actual logic to an implementation contract, which is our engine block. Want to upgrade? You just swap out the engine block for a brand new one while the chassis stays exactly the same. And this beautifully, or maybe terrifyingly, illustrates exactly where our vulnerabilities lie, right in that swapping process. Since we're engineers, we aren't just going to sit here and point out flaws today. We're actually going to fix them using a really rigorous test-fix-test rhythm. We call this the mitigation cycle. Step 1, we reproduce the exploit with a failing test. Step 2, we implement the absolute minimal code-level mitigation. And Step 3, we run a passing test that proves the vulnerability is actually sealed. Honestly, this cycle is going to be your absolute best friend.
Section 2, Guarding the Initializer, Sealing the Vault.
So imagine having this massive, impenetrable steel vault, but the combination lock on the front, it can be reset by literally anyone who just walks by. That is exactly what happens when you mess up your initializer. Because we're using proxies, we can't use standard Solidity constructors to set up our state. Instead, we have to use an initializer function. You got to think of an initializer as a physical, tamper-proof seal on your machine. It absolutely must be set only once during assembly. If that seal is broken or reset, the whole machine is totally compromised.
So what actually happens if we leave it unprotected? Well, it's comically disastrous. It's essentially like installing a massive glowing orange button on your protocol that just says, push to steal. An attacker notices the proxy pointing to the contract. They just call the initialize function a second time, and since there's no guard, the contract just blindly obeys. The attacker passes their own wallet address into the function, totally overriding the owner variable. Just like that, they own your entire protocol. Literally, game over.
So how do we stop this madness? We slap a strict guard on it. By importing OpenZeppelin's initializable contract, we can literally just add the initializer modifier to our function. What this does is it flips a Boolean flag in the contract state the very first time it's run. If some attacker tries to push that override button a second time, the modifier checks the flag and instantly reverts the transaction. Boom. Our automated tests will actually expect the transaction to revert, which proves our protocol is locked down and safe.
Section 3, Locking Down Upgrades, the Master Control Panel.
All right, we've secured the initial setup. But now we have to ask a seriously critical question. Who is actually allowed to swap out the engine block? If you have missing upgrade authorization, you are essentially leaving the master blueprint control panel completely unguarded, right in the front lobby of your building. If your admin functions like upgrade to are left public, or even if they're weakly guarded by a single compromised key, well, an unauthorized user can just trigger the upgrade transaction. And they don't just steal the state, they maliciously replace the entire logic of the contract with a brand new engine specifically designed to siphon out every single token.
To fix this, we've got to enforce really robust access controls. We must separate day-to-day admin actions from these structural, heart transplant level upgrades. By enforcing a multisig wallet, meaning multiple independent keys have to agree, or by adding a timelock controller that forces a mandatory waiting period before an upgrade executes, we stop this unauthorized attack path dead in its tracks. The attackers simply cannot unilaterally change the engine anymore.
Section 4, Storage Layout Mismatches, Rearranging the Gears. Now this next vulnerability, it isn't about outside attackers at all. It's about us, literally shooting ourselves in the foot by rearranging the gears while the machine is running. To grasp this, we need to define storage layout. In Solidity, state variables are mapped to physical, sequentially numbered slots in the contract's memory.
Just picture a series of stacked, numbered boxes holding your contract's essential data. Slot 0 holds the owner, slot 1 holds the counter, slot 2 holds the balances, and so on. The proxy contract relies perfectly on these numbered boxes, never ever changing their fundamental order. But imagine in version 2, a well-meaning developer decides to just tidy up the code and inserts a brand new variable at the very top of the script. In a normal app, no big deal at all. But in an upgradable smart contract, you just shoved a new box right into slot 0. That pushes the original owner down to slot 1 and the counter down to slot 2. So when the proxy reads the memory, it looks at slot 1 expecting to find a counter, but surprise, it finds an Ethereum address instead. The entire state is instantly and catastrophically corrupted.
So, the absolute key here is following strict operational rules to avoid this nightmare. Rule 1. Always record your pre-upgrade variable values in your test suite. Rule 2. You must append new variables only at the very end of your storage layout. Never insert at the top or in the middle. You only add new gears to the end of the machine. And Rule 3. Run migration tests. You need to assert that the invariant data, like that original counter, is exactly the same before and after the engine swap.
Section 5. The Debug Report, our safety certificate.
All right, now that we've found and fixed these major vulnerabilities, let's bring it all together. Take a look at this table. It brilliantly illustrates the output of our mitigation cycle. Look at how perfectly every single risk we discovered maps directly to a reproduction test and a verified code-level mitigation. Unprotected initializer matched with the reinit test file and solved by the initializable guard. Missing upgrade auth matched to our timelock test. And the storage mismatch is beautifully covered by our invariant tests. It's clean, it's proven, and it's completely reproducible.
I really want you to remember this quote. This report is not just busy work or annoying administrative paperwork. It's the vital bridge between your local testing environment and team-level governance. When you go to a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, to ask for an upgrade, this report is your literal proof that the new engine is totally safe to install.
Section 6. Conclusion and next steps. Preparing for governance.
So, we've successfully engineered the mechanical flaws out of our upgrade system today. Let's quickly summarize the 3 core principles you should take away from this explainer. 1. Separate your upgrade authorization from daily admin actions using things like timelocks and multisigs. 2. Rigorously protect your initialization and migration routines. Please do not leave that main override button unguarded. And 3. Treat storage layout changes as first-class hazards. Always append, never insert, and always test your invariants.
Now that we've got this perfectly secured upgrade scaffolding, it begs a pretty fascinating question. How do governance actors and community processes actually interact with this system we just built? Like, who votes on the time lock? How is the multisig even chosen? Well, that is exactly what we're going to be covering in our next explainer. Until then, I highly encourage you to continue your Web3 journey by visiting forge.college. We've got plenty of resources there to help you master all these concepts. I'm your host, signing off on behalf of Forge College, and I will see you in the next one.